The ambassador's misstep. Orion Vega had prepared for this moment with 3 weeks of intensive training, countless simulations, and enough anxiety medication to tranquilize a small horse. None of it helped when he found himself standing before the towering figure of Commander Talia Nix of the Astrolese, feeling as though his diplomatic uniform had shrunk 2 sizes. "Don't fidget, don't stare, and absolutely do not comment on their height," whispered Nova, his neural assistant, directly into his auditory implant. The AI's voice carried the resigned tone of someone who had watched Orion stumble through diplomatic incidents across 3 star systems. The reception hall of the Terran Embassy Station Concord hummed with the subtle vibration of gravity modulators and the much less subtle tension of first contact protocols. Orion tried not to think about the fact that the Astrolese were known primarily for 3 things: their unparalleled combat skills, their rigid honor code, and their ability to crush titanium with their bare hands. Commander Talia stood at least 7 feet tall, her scaled skin shifting between deep indigo and midnight blue depending on how the light struck her. Angular ridges framed her face, sweeping back into crystalline formations that resembled a crown. Her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle, were the color of nebulae, swirling with purples and blues that seemed to contain their own galaxies. "Earth Ambassador Vega," she said, her voice like distant thunder over a calm sea. "The Astrolese Concordat acknowledges your presence." Orion had been briefed that this was the formal greeting, curt, direct, and devoid of the flowery pleasantries humans tended to exchange. He had rehearsed his response 100 times. What emerged instead was, "You're absolutely radiant." The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to swallow the ambient hum of the station itself. Nova made a sound that could only be described as an AI having a small stroke. Talia's skin, previously cycling through cool blues, suddenly flushed with a brilliant magenta that spread from her face down her neck and across her exposed shoulders. Her central eye widened fractionally, and the crystalline ridges along her skull vibrated with a soft chime. Behind her, the Astrolese delegation collectively froze. One of them, a smaller, green-tinged official, dropped a ceremonial staff. The clatter echoed painfully in the silence. That is. I mean, your armor is impressive," Orion stammered, desperately trying to recover from whatever catastrophic faux pas he'd just committed. Nova's voice was tight in his ear. The word radiant in their language is kalvas, which roughly translates to one whose light I would orbit eternally and is only used in sacred bonding ceremonies. "So I just proposed marriage?" "Yes. More or less." Commander Talia finally moved, tilting her head at a precise angle that Orion's cultural briefing had failed to prepare him for. "You speak with unusual directness for a human diplomat," she said, the magenta glow refusing to fade from her skin. Captain Joanna Reed, Orion's superior and the head of the Earth delegation, stepped forward with the smooth grace of someone who had navigated interplanetary incidents for 30 years. "Commander Talia, please accept our apologies for any confusion. Ambassador Vega is still learning the cultural nuances of." Talia raised one 4-fingered hand, effectively silencing the room. "No apology is required. Directness is valued among the Astrolese. We will continue this discussion, privately." Her third eye fixed on Orion with unsettling intensity. "Ambassador Vega and I have much to discuss." And with that pronouncement, Orion knew his diplomatic career had just taken a turn into uncharted space. "I've reviewed your file," Talia said as they walked the curved corridor of the station's observation deck. "It says you were chosen for this position due to your exceptional empathic abilities and cultural adaptability." Orion winced. "My file is overly generous." It also mentions 17 incidents of diplomatic creativity, including something called the Proxima Centauri fondue incident. That was a misunderstanding involving lactose intolerance and anti-gravity. A small vibration emanated from Talia, a sound Orion eventually realized was laughter, though it resembled grinding glass. They stopped at the panoramic viewport, where the vast expanse of space stretched before them. The Astralis mothership hung in the distance, a colossal structure resembling an obsidian lotus, its petals occasionally pulsing with blue energy. Ambassador Vega. Orion, please. Orion, she said, testing the name. Do you understand what you have initiated? He leaned against the railing, trying for nonchalance despite the sweat gathering at his collar. Nova tells me I accidentally proposed some kind of bonding ritual. I genuinely apologize for any offense. There was no offense, Talia interrupted. But there are expectations now. What kind of expectations? Her third eye blinked slowly. When an Astralis receives a declaration of Kaldas, it initiates the path of recognition. A series of challenges and shared experiences that determine compatibility. Like dates. The magenta flush returned briefly to her ridges. Like sacred trials that have existed for 10,000 years. Ah. Orion glanced at her profile against the starfield. Despite her intimidating stature and the fact that she could probably break him in half without trying, there was something compelling about her presence. A steadiness. A certainty. I've put you in an awkward position, he acknowledged. You have created a situation of complexity, she agreed. The Astralis-human alliance is still fragile. My people respect strength and conviction. To reject a declaration now would suggest humans are frivolous with their words. And that would damage the alliance negotiations. Precisely. Orion rubbed his temples. So what happens now? Do I have to fight someone? Because I should warn you, my combat training was limited to one self-defense course where I accidentally pepper-sprayed myself. That grinding glass laugh again. Fighting is only one form of strength, Orion Vega. The path has many forms. Before he could ask more, a small creature bounded toward them from further down the corridor. It looked like a cross between a fox and a jellyfish, iridescent, with tentacle-like appendages flowing behind it as it moved. What is that? Orion asked. A Lumina, Talia replied. A bonding companion. It appears my second-in-command has already initiated tradition. She sounded resigned. The creature chirped, then leapt directly onto Orion's shoulder. Its weight was negligible, like a scarf made of starlight. It nuzzled against his neck, leaving a trail of bioluminescent sparkles. Is it safe? Mostly. It responds to emotional states and forms a connection between bonded pairs. Though it may occasionally taste your hair. As if on cue, the Lumina began chewing on a lock of Orion's dark hair. Wonderful, he muttered. His communicator buzzed. It was Captain Reed, emergency briefing in 10 minutes. The Astralis High Council is requesting updates on the bonding progression. What did you do, Vega? Orion looked at Talia, who was watching him with those nebula eyes, unreadable and ancient. I think I might have accidentally become the most important diplomat in human history. Or the most disastrous, she replied, but there was no malice in her tone. Come. We should prepare you for the Council's questions. They will want to know your intentions. My intentions were to not trip during the greeting ceremony. I've already exceeded expectations by accidentally proposing marriage instead. As they walked back toward the conference section, the Lumina still perched on his shoulder, Orion couldn't help but notice how the starlight caught on Talia's crystalline ridges, creating rainbows that danced across her scaled skin. He cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. About you being radiant. Even if I didn't know the implications. Talia's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. The magenta flush returned, spreading like watercolor across her features. That, she said quietly, is not helping our situation. But Orion noticed she didn't look displeased, and the Lumina on his shoulder began to glow brighter, casting both of them in a soft, rose-gold light. Behind them, a junior ambassador from Earth witnessed the scene and immediately sent a message to the entire diplomatic corps, Vega's done it again. But this time I think he might have accidentally saved the alliance. Or started an interspecies incident. Still determining which. As they approached the conference room, Orion realized that his career, and possibly human-Astralis relations, now hinged on how well he could navigate an ancient alien courtship ritual he'd initiated by mistake. The Lumina purred and left a trail of sparkles down his back. At least someone was enjoying the situation. Bonds beyond stars. The next 3 days aboard the Concorde were a blur of protocol violations, cultural misunderstandings, and what Captain Reed officially labeled unprecedented diplomatic complexity. Unofficially, she called it the Vega catastrophe. Orion stood in the preparation chamber, watching in mild horror as 2 Astralis attendants fitted him with ceremonial armor. The metal alloy, impossibly light yet strong enough to withstand small arms fire, molded to his body like liquid mercury before hardening into intricate plates emblazoned with symbols he couldn't read. "Is the chest piece supposed to constrict like that?" he wheezed. "It calibrates to your respiratory pattern," explained Jean, the station's xenobiologist who'd been assigned as his cultural advisor after Nova had threatened to delete herself rather than continue, enabling this interstellar train wreck. "It feels like it's calculating how long I have to live," Orion muttered. "That's not entirely inaccurate," Jean replied cheerfully. "The armor monitors your vital signs. It's actually a great honor. Astralis rarely allow non-warriors to wear battle regalia." The Lumina, which Orion had reluctantly named Sparkles, zipped around the chamber trailing iridescent light. It had tripled in size since attaching itself to him, feeding on what Talia explained was emotional resonance. "Just how many of these challenges are there in the path of recognition?" Orion asked, trying not to panic as the armor sealed itself at his throat. Jen consulted her tablet. "Traditionally 7, but the High Council has mercifully condensed it to 3 for your case, considering the unusual circumstances. And the first challenge is the trial of understanding. You and Commander Talia will be neurally linked through the Astralis empathic interface to experience each other's formative memories." Orion blanched. "They're going to see inside my head. My memories? Only the ones that shaped your core identity." "Relax, Vega, it's not like they'll see that time you tried to flirt with the Centaurian ambassador by complimenting his tentacles. That was a legitimate cultural exchange. You asked if they were detachable for convenience." Before Orion could defend himself, the chamber doors parted, revealing Commander Talia in her full ceremonial regalia. Where Orion's armor was silver with blue accents, hers was obsidian with magenta highlights that matched the flush she still couldn't quite control around him. Her crystalline crown ridges had been adorned with tiny luminescent gems that caught the light with every movement. Orion's breath caught. "You look," he stopped himself before another accidental proposal could escape. "Acceptable?" Talia suggested. "Magnificent," he corrected, and was rewarded with that now familiar magenta glow spreading across her features. The Lumina chirped excitedly, expanding another few inches. "The council awaits," Talia said, extending a 4-fingered hand. As Orion took it, the armor at his wrist interfaced with hers, creating a circuit of soft blue light between them. "Remember," Jean whispered as they departed, "the Alliance trade agreement gets signed after this ceremony. No pressure." The empathic interface resembled a pool of liquid starlight, contained within a circular platform at the center of what the Astralis called the Chamber of Recognition. The High Council, 5 imposing figures in elaborate armor, observed from elevated seats around the perimeter. "This is going well," Nova commented dryly in Orion's ear. The AI had reluctantly returned to duty after Captain Reed threatened to replace it with an outdated translation program. "Only 17 diplomatic representatives and the entire Astralis High Council watching you mind meld with their most decorated warrior. No chance for catastrophe here." "Your support means everything," Orion muttered. Talia led him to the edge of the pool. "The interface will seek resonance between our minds. It may be intense." Define intense. Few non-Astralis have experienced it. Their descriptions included, having my soul turned inside out, and like being simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. That sounds unpleasant. They survived. Mostly. Mostly. But there was no time for clarification. The High Counselor, a massive astrolabe with silver-blue scales and 5 eyes instead of the usual 3, raised a ceremonial staff. "Begin the witnessing," she intoned. Talia stepped into the pool, the liquid light swirling around her ankles, then knees, then waist as she waded to the center. She turned, extending both hands toward Orion. Taking a deep breath, he followed, shivering as the cool substance engulfed him. It felt like stepping into liquid moonlight, weightless yet somehow substantial. When he reached Talia and took her hands, the light surged upward, enveloping them both in a cocoon of radiance. And then he was falling. He was 6 years old, watching his parents' research vessel disappear into the atmosphere of Venus, moments before the catastrophic reactor failure that would claim their lives and push humanity's Venus colonization efforts back by decades. He was 13, standing defiantly between a group of bullies and a young Martian colonist they'd been tormenting for his adapted physiology. He was 22, receiving his diplomatic corps assignment and swearing to himself that he would help build a universe where species understood each other better than his parents' generation had. The memories flickered and changed, but these weren't his anymore. She was a hatchling, carefully arranging crystal formations while other young astrolabes practiced combat drills. Her progenitor's disappointment was palpable. She was a junior warrior, volunteering for a dangerous mission to rescue civilians from a mining colony disaster when others hesitated. She was standing before the High Council, accepting the position of commander despite knowing it would distance her further from her peers. Astrolabes respected strength, but also feared those who wielded too much power. The visions accelerated, blending and merging until Orion couldn't tell where his experiences ended and Talia's began. Pain, triumph, loneliness, purpose, all flowing together like tributaries into a single river of understanding. At the core, a revelation: they were both outsiders who had made service their anchor. Both driven by an almost desperate need to forge connections between worlds. When the light receded and they emerged gasping from the interface, Orion found tear tracks on his cheeks and a newfound respect in Talia's nebula eyes. "You understand," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. The second challenge, the trial of harmony, proved less metaphysically intrusive but more physically demanding. It required perfect synchronization in a ritualized combat dance that left Orion with 3 minor contusions and a sprained wrist. "I think your dance might qualify as assault on my planet," he joked as the station's medical officer applied regenerative gel to his injuries. Talia, who hadn't even broken a sweat, tilted her head. "You moved with surprising grace for someone with only 2 eyes and insufficient bone density. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." The lumina, now the size of a small dog and glowing like a supernova, bounced between them, occasionally projecting miniature constellations from its tentacles. It was during the preparation for the third and final challenge, the trial of truth, that everything went catastrophically wrong. "What do you mean, separatist attack?" Orion demanded as alarms blared throughout the station. Captain Reed's hologram flickered with static. "A faction of astrolabe extremists who oppose the Alliance have taken control of the station's central hub. They're threatening to overload the core unless we terminate all negotiations." "Where's Talia?" "She went to confront them. Apparently, their leader is her former second-in-command." Orion's blood ran cold. Through the empathic interface, he had glimpsed this relationship. Draven, once Talia's mentor, now radicalized by fear of change and what he saw as dilution of astrolabe's identity through contact with other species. "I need to get to the central hub." "Absolutely not," Reed countered. "This is a military situation now. You're to remain in the secure diplomatic wing until..." Orion terminated the call. "Nova, give me the quickest route to Central Hub that avoids security lockdowns." "This is extraordinarily ill-advised," the AI responded, but displayed the route anyway. The Lumina chittered anxiously, its glow dimming to a worried amber as it followed Orion through the maintenance corridors. By the time Orion reached the Central Hub, he could hear the confrontation already underway. Through the reinforced glass panel in the door, he saw Talia facing off against a group of armored Astralese rebels. At their center stood Draven, larger than Talia and with scales the color of burned copper. "You betray our entire history," Draven was saying, his voice carrying even through the barrier. "The Astralese do not bow, we do not blend, we do not dilute our strength with lesser species." "There is no strength in isolation," Talia countered. "The universe evolves. We must evolve with it. Because of your human. The one who trapped you in a sacred bond through ignorance." Draven scoffed. "The council may have been fooled by this charade, but I know you, Talia. You would never willingly bond with such weakness." Orion felt a strange pang at those words. Despite everything, despite knowing their bond had begun as an accident, he had started to feel something genuine for the Stoic commander. Something that had nothing to do with diplomatic necessity. The Lumina, sensing his distress, expanded suddenly, its glow intensifying to near blinding brightness. And that's when Orion had an absolutely terrible idea. "This is without question the stupidest thing you've ever done," Nova hissed as Orion coaxed the Lumina into the environmental control duct. "That's saying something," Orion agreed, removing his ceremonial armor gauntlet and attaching it to the creature. "But Talia needs a distraction, and our sparkly friend here loves nothing more than attention." The Lumina, understanding its mission with uncanny intelligence, pulsed with excitement. "Now remember," Orion whispered to it, "big entrance, lots of light, then find Talia." He opened the duct and the Lumina shot forward like a comet. Taking a deep breath, Orion overrode the door lock with his diplomatic access code and stepped into chaos. The central hub erupted in blinding light as the Lumina burst from the ventilation system, trailing starlight and projecting a kaleidoscope of colors that temporarily disoriented everyone in the room. Everyone except Talia, who had experienced the creature's light shows for days. She moved with liquid grace, disarming two separatists before they could recover. The Lumina found her, depositing Orion's gauntlet at her feet, the armor piece containing the emergency override codes for the station's security systems. When Draven regained his vision, he found himself facing not just Talia, but Orion as well, who had managed to position himself between the commander and the remaining separatists. "Stand down, Draven," Orion said, with more confidence than he felt. "The station security teams will be here in moments." The separatist leader sneered. "The soft-skinned diplomat thinks to challenge me. Perhaps I should show you what happens to those who meddle in Astralese affairs." He lunged forward, but Talia intercepted him, their ceremonial blades clashing in a shower of sparks. "He is my bonded," she growled, her scales flaring with intense magenta light. "And you will not touch him." The ferocity in her voice gave even Draven pause. "You actually care for this human?" he asked, genuine confusion breaking through his anger. "I do," she replied, and Orion's heart stuttered at the certainty in her voice. "I have seen his heart. He is not what you think, what I once thought humans were. There is strength in his compassion, wisdom in his flexibility." The Lumina, sensing the emotional resonance, expanded to twice its size, its light taking on the exact hue of Talia's scales. Draven looked between them, then at the Lumina, his expression shifting from disdain to uncertainty. Among the Astralese, the bonding creatures never lied, their biological responses were considered the purest form of truth. "This is real?" he asked, almost to himself. "It began as accident," Talia acknowledged. "It has become choice." The standoff might have ended there, if not for one overzealous separatist who chose that moment to lunge at Orion from behind. What happened next occurred so quickly that later accounts would conflict. Talia moved to intercept the attack. Orion, having absorbed enough of Talia's combat memories through the interface to develop basic instincts, pivoted and executed a defensive maneuver that shouldn't have been possible for someone with his training. Their movements synchronized perfectly, a continuation of the ritual combat dance they had performed earlier, and the attacker found himself disarmed and immobilized between them. The Lumina exploded in a supernova of light, projecting a perfect crystalline structure that encompassed all three of them, the ancient symbol of completed recognition. The trial of truth, whispered one of the separatists, lowering his weapon. They've passed it. Draven stared, his rebellion crumbling at the witnessing of what his culture held sacred. One by one, the separatists knelt, following their leader's reluctant example. 3 weeks later, on the observation deck of the Concorde, Orion stood beside Talia watching the official signing ceremony via holographic transmission. The Earth-Australis Alliance Treaty was being hailed as the most significant interspecies agreement of the decade. Captain Reed is taking full credit, of course, Orion noted, adjusting the sling that still supported his injured arm. As is our High Council, Talia replied. They're calling it, a masterful strategic courtship orchestrated to demonstrate human commitment to understanding Astralis values. Quite impressive planning on our part, considering I had no idea what I was doing. Talia's scales shifted to a soft lavender, a color Orion had come to associate with her amusement. Sometimes ignorance creates its own wisdom. The Lumina, now permanently bonded to both of them, floated lazily between them, occasionally projecting tiny replicas of Earth and the Astralis homeworld orbiting each other. I received my new assignment this morning, Orion said after a comfortable silence. They're creating a joint embassy on Proxima Centauri b. I'm to be the human representative. I am aware, Talia replied. I requested the Astralis posting there. Orion turned to her in surprise. You're coming to Proxima? The path of recognition is complete, but the bond of understanding has only begun, she said, her central eye fixed on him with unmistakable warmth. Besides, someone must ensure you don't accidentally propose to any other species. That was a one-time special offer, he assured her, reaching out tentatively. Talia's four-fingered hand met his halfway, their armor interfaces connecting with a soft glow that matched the Lumina's pulsing light. You know, Orion said thoughtfully, on Earth, there's an old saying, some of the best journeys start with getting lost. On Astralis, we say, the stars that collide create new constellations.